By all accounts that I can find, the late 1890s were a time of decided ups and downs in the history of this great parish. Under the leadership of its rector at that time, the Reverend Mr. Benjamin Hartley, the Church of Our Saviour became a center of social life for the San Gabriel Valley. In 1896, the church had grown to such capacity that a parish hall was built by the Ladies' Aid Society. Plans were even drawn to expand the church building, yet before any steps were taken, a large number of families suddenly left this parish, moving to Los Angeles, Pasadena, or other towns in the valley. Simultaneously, there was a wave of older parishioners who passed away and were buried in the adjoining cemetery. By 1912, there were just 22 members of the Church of Our Saviour, only 12 of whom were considered active. The author of the 1972 history of the Church of Our Saviour writes, quote, "Suddenly, instead of an overflow, there were so few members that there was grave danger of having to abandon the work of the Church of Our Saviour, but the remnant struggled on." The remnant struggled on. The appointed readings are not on my side this morning, but I am struggling on. Today, as the Church of Our Saviour begins a new chapter in its history, I would much prefer Jesus simply tell us that He loves us, that we are doing a good job, perhaps that everything will work out in the end. I could use a pat on the back or a hearty handshake. Instead, we were told that whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. I love my father and I love my mother. I love my grandparents. I love my children. I love my wife. I love my sister. I even love my two brothers-in-law most of the time. And I also love life itself. As people who follow Jesus, we proclaim that we are a resurrection people. The tomb is empty and death no longer has the last word. Yet, practically, we so often live on Holy Saturday. We mourn the loss of loved ones. We weep for those whose needs are not heard. We grieve the tiny deaths in our lives, such as a child leaving for school, a friend relocating, retiring from a profession and therefore from an identity. We're losing the ability to physically function as we have our whole lives, even fearing the sustainability of a beloved church home. Did you notice our first lesson from Deuteronomy? So easy to miss with so many things happening this morning. A majestic speech by Moses in Deuteronomy nears its conclusion in a stirring exhortation. In the wilderness beyond the Jordan, the Israelites listen as their prophetic leader describes the kind of people they have become and the kind of people they need to remain. Formed in the crucible of suffering and redemption, Moses now asks God's people to be a people of faith and obedience, to choose life and not death. We are a people of life, not death. That being said, Jesus never told us that death would simply go away if we became His disciples. To be a resurrection people is to know that the power of death has been destroyed, not death itself. To be an Easter people is to know that in Jesus there is more life, not less death. More life, not less death. My former bishop in Indianapolis used to say that we are a resurrection people, and resurrection only works on dead things. As a church leader, I know that too often I fall victim to the temptation to strive for less death and not more life in my leadership. Seeking more life means letting go of expectations, roles, and ways of being in order to make way for new life and new hope in the continuity of God's grace and hope in Jesus Christ. For me, when Jesus tells us to hate father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, he is challenging us to let go of that which prevents our hearts, minds, and souls from a resurrection life in Jesus. That sounds nice, but what does that look like? What does it look like to be a resurrection people? You may have noticed that the stole I'm wearing this morning it's white, but it does not match the beautiful altar frontal. And that's because this stole was commissioned by my grandparents and given to me at my priestly ordination. Now, my grandparents lived their entire lives going to St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Racine, Wisconsin. My grandmother was the head of the altar guild at St. Luke's for 26 years. So at the bottom of this stole, it says, "Congratulations, Nan and Pop." Stole is very important to me. I did not wear this stole for the first 3.5 or so years that I was a priest. And then I had an occasion where the head of the altar guild at my first church, St. John's in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, ran across this stole in the sacristy. And she asked me, she said, "Jeff, why don't you wear this stole? It's a beautiful stole." And I said, "Well, it doesn't match the altar frontals." This is true. And my grandmother taught me to fear the altar guild. And then I thought about this stole, and I prayed about my reticence to wear it, and I realized that my reluctance to wear this stole is because I love my grandparents. I want them to live forever. I want them to be in my life forever. I want them to be in my daughter's lives forever. And yet that can't happen. But that doesn't mean that the blessings they've shared, the memories and wisdom, will ever go away. The manifestation of that love may change, which is why I need to wear this stole to appreciate the blessings they've shared. So I had the great honor this past March of preaching at my grandfather's funeral at St. Luke's in Racine, Wisconsin. And I preached about the resurrection. I preached that Pop was with God, and nothing could ever take away his love, his memory, or his wisdom. And then several weeks later, I wore this stole on Easter morning at my last church, Holy Trinity in Fayetteville. And one of my daughters, I won't name who, noticed this stole, and they said, "Dad, that's Pop's stole. Pop's with God." I said, "Yes." And then they said, "Well, Dad, it doesn't match the other vestments." On this, our Saviour Sunday, we celebrate a dynamic parish, rich in history and abundant in potential. There are actually a number of promises I can make you, of which I know I can deliver. I will work hard and faithfully as your rector. I will learn from you and about you. I will love you to the best of my ability. I will also make mistakes, and I will do my best to fix them. I will make terrible dad jokes. I am not a very good singer, and some of you will pick up on that if you have not yet. I will also seek a resurrection life in Jesus with you. A life of letting go, allowing for grace and for love. And to be clear, the Church of Our Saviour knows how to do this. In your history, you know resurrection. After the Reverend Mr. Hartley died in 1912, leaving a church of 22 communicants, 12 of whom were active, the remnant struggled on. The small remaining group let go of whatever fear they held about their future, rebelled at suggestions to close or combine with other missions, pooled and reallocated resources, and set to the work before them. The call of the Reverend Dr. John Atwell, whose 30-year tenure rejuvenated the parish and set it on a completely different course for its future. On this, our Saviour Sunday, I thank you for calling me as your next rector, and I ask you to go with us as we seek to be a resurrection people, a people who seek more life, not less death.